Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, in reviewing this Facilitation of International Maritime Traffic bill that is before us, it seems to me that the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport and the Barbados Port, Inc. are showing a tremendous amount of leadership in an area that, as an administration, this government has committed to bringing to the forefront and indeed putting at the center of everything that we do. The legislation is meant to enhance efficiency. It is meant to speak to the sharing of data. It is meant to promote the notion or the approach where an operator, and through this single window approach, where an operator does not have to present her or himself and their documentation 3 and 4 and 5 times to be able to facilitate a process. And that idea and that leadership is what really is meant to carry us forward in every area of what we do. From where I newly sit as the minister that's now responsible for efficiency, and I don't call the name of the ministry, I call the things that we are meant to deliver. Efficiency and facilitation and ease of doing business and the use of technology in ways that matter and in ways that make people's lives easier. And having that mandate, this legislation definitely, certainly, undoubtedly shows a tremendous amount of leadership, and I know that it did not happen overnight. But what I take from what this bill will be able to do once passed is a lot of guidance for what the ministry responsible for facilitation and technology must do, must continue to do. Now, one of those very important things is the idea that once you present yourself to the government, to the state, as a user, as a client, one time, that is the only time that you will have to make that presentation to the state. And I know that Barbadians listening must think that that would be a dream come true. That through a single unique identifier, that may be your ID number, that should be, once all the work is complete, a digital ID, that you then are able to carry that identity across a range of government services. Indeed, across all of the government services that you need to access. And I mention that because I consider that one of the most important things that we need to be able to deliver to the people of Barbados as clients of the state. But I realize that it will not be a simple question of just bringing effect to the technology or just bringing effect to the platform that will allow that to happen. It has to be a conversation. And I say conversation, not a fight or a quarrel. But it has to be a conversation. I spent some time over the past, feels like 5 seconds, but really it was about 10 days or so, with the data commissioner, who must be empowered, not just through the legislation, but through the resources that we put at her disposal, must be empowered to be able to carve out and to make Barbadians confident that the data to which the state has access to be able to deliver services for them and to them and on their behalf is protected, will be protected. And that is a key part of what the Ministry of Industry, Science and Technology will have to do and will have to continue to do going forward. But I say it's a conversation because I feel that we all need to be able to understand that there is benefit in joining the rest of the world in the 21st century. There is benefit. And that, you know, we are on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. Well, if I say Facebook, I'm dating myself because young people are not on Facebook, only the older people. And Twitter or whatever it's called now. I don't know, but people are still using Snapchat. I'm not sure. But we present we present our lives to the world. You know, I see sometimes people travel, and you know, travel influencers are a big thing, and people are traveling and they're showing you their boarding pass, and they're showing you which airport they're leaving from and which airport they're, and I'm thinking, but I'm not sure that this is wise. But we avail our entire selves, avail the public of our entire selves, and this is a global public. And then we are concerned when someone perhaps shares a piece of information or a set of information between one government department and another. And don't get me wrong, I believe very much in the importance of data privacy. The legislation that we have recently brought puts huge emphasis on the importance of data privacy. But it is possible to share data and to retain its integrity and the privacy thereof. We brought an entire piece of legislation and set up an entire office of a data commissioner to be able to do that. And why? Because we realize that every time you have to go to a polyclinic and fill out 4 forms, and then you have to go to a licensing authority and wait for 4 hours. Every time that you have to go and present yourself to an entity of the state as if you are a brand new person, you are wasting time that you can be productive. The state and the country is losing that productive capacity that could otherwise be earning for you.
I remember hearing noise.
Sir, I'm willing to pause until it's...
Yeah, because I hear noise as if it is emanating from a cell phone. This is 2024. I hear noise, tremendous feedback from a cell phone that is disturbing to my ears. It really is. You hear? Continue, I remember.
Thank you, sir. So the entire rationale behind the creation of a post of data commissioner in office, and I know that our colleagues who work in the private sector agree that this office must be well-resourced in order to do the very important work of ensuring data privacy so that we can have data sharing. I know that one of the efforts of government will also relate to an updated piece of statistical legislation and the creation of an independent statistics and data analytics authority. And why is that necessary? Because it is some of our very own existing legislation that is currently preventing the mere sharing of data from one government entity to another. So while we want to create certain benefits for citizens of Barbados in terms of us not having to present multiple times to several government entities. We also have to get ourselves in order to do that. Because as it stands today, there are clauses, there are bits of legislation, there are structural challenges that prevent the mere sharing of data today between certain government entities. And so we have to all agree to what we want. And the responsibility of the state is the protection of people's information. But when I talk about the conversation that we have to have, it is to agree that if we are to join the rest of the world in the 21st century, we have in some ways to be able to suspend our cynicism and to believe in the strength and the enforcement of the legislation that is there to protect citizens' privacy. We have to hold each other's hands to get there. Because this is, in the end, for our collective benefit. So this legislation also creates a paperless system for the exchange of information. And I cannot emphasize enough how much it is time to get rid of the paper that plagues us. You know, sir, when you print a receipt and give it to me, it immediately begins to lose value because of the fact that it will fade. In a little while, I will no longer be able to depend on that receipt to be able to give evidence of anything, because the ink will fade and it will be a blank piece of paper. You know, the other stakeholder in the conversation is not just the state, it is not just the citizen, but it is also, importantly, the private sector. Most places that we go, we are asked, can I send you an email receipt? And there are quite a few reasons for that. I feel that if we are able to get to a place where we share things like receipts and other important documentations with clients in that paperless way, then their own record keeping has more value. That receipt as a record for them has more value for them as well as for us. Being able to substantiate financial transactions is a key part of what people need to be able to do. And I feel as well that it promotes a culture of evidence. I speak often, sir, about the idea of a culture of evidence. There's sometimes, you know, and my father will not be amused that I'm talking about him in this honorable place, but I will say to my father, who has gone to see a doctor, so what's the name of the person that you saw who gave you this particular advice? Or what is it that they wrote? Or what is it that they... And he says to me, she had on a hat. Or she had on a blue shirt. And I say, oh, Daddy, I cannot use that evidence. If we are able to get to a place where we empower citizens, clients, and you'll hear me talk about clients because Barbadians, to the extent that we deliver services, are clients of the state. But if we are able to strengthen their own capacity to have and keep and understand the information that affects them, then that in itself is a critical service, sir, to be able to deliver to people. The question of the transferal of medical records, to be able to say, to move between specialists, to move from the hospital to the polyclinic. You know, there are certain jurisdictions, sir, in which you present yourself to any hospital, to any clinic, to any specialist in the healthcare system. And by just putting in a number, every record is available only to them so that they can be able to access certain information related to your care. Why is that important, sir? There are doctors in this honorable place. It is important to understand what medication a gastroenterologist may have prescribed that has contraindications for what a urologist may prescribe. It is important to be able to see that individual, that patient, as an entire person, to manage that case in a holistic way so that one does no harm to the patient, to the client of the system. Again, protection of data is critical in that conversation. And we will not advance to that place before we have sufficiently resourced the Data Commissioner and her office to be able to make sure that we are protecting people's information. But I want to say this as well. The fact that information is electronic does not mean that it is more vulnerable to being shared or being abused. I remember walking into a bank many years ago, and the paper form that the customer before me had filled out was put up against the glass. That's just how they chose to keep it. So the person fills out a form, they turn it over against the same glass that is looking out at me, and I can see exactly who was there before me. There are many medical offices in this country that ask you to sign to write your name down when you walk in. And I say respectfully, I am afraid not. Because whoever comes in, if I come in at 8 o'clock, whoever comes at 8:30, at 9, at 10:30, they will know that Marsha Caddle was there. I really don't think that they should be privy to that information. So the fact of a piece of information being electronic does not in itself make it more vulnerable to exploitation or to indiscriminate sharing. In fact, I dare say that paper is more vulnerable. Paper blow away, paper fall off a truck. All kinds of things can happen with paper. And so, as I begin this conversation with our friends and colleagues and constituents and the people that we humbly serve from this place, I want us to understand that we all have to find together a certain level of comfort to make it so that we benefit from the best of what is happening in the tech space in this year, 2024. Sir, as I begin to see the opportunities that my two colleagues before me who served as minister have started to help explore and create, there is a lot of reason to be excited about what is possible. This piece of legislation is more evidence of what is possible and what, in fact, this government is doing. There are those who are rightly concerned about issues of cybersecurity. And in the blink of an eye, this place will consider legislation that begins to look at what we can do to protect citizens and their information, what we can do to protect businesses. We must not be complacent in these matters. This is not something that happens somewhere else. You know, a couple years ago, we heard about a virus in a place called Wuhan that we thought had originated there. And I'm sure that many people thought, well, these things pop up all the time far away. No way that's getting here. And then we were made to eat our words. The matter of cybersecurity, as it relates to our capacity to share data and our protection in that regard, is one that I assure the country is at the forefront of my mind and this government's thinking and action as we begin this year, 2024. It will mean that we need to call on our friends in the private sector, the local, regional, and global private sector, to address this matter frontally. This is not a space where we want to be, where we can say, or we want to say, well, we are going to keep this among ourselves. As a matter of security, as a matter of national security, there are some things that will not be able to be the matter of public discourse. But certainly, the resources from which we draw to be able to prepare ourselves adequately must, of necessity, come from outside of the government. Because it is one of the most dynamic areas that we will have to confront and come to terms with. And I say that as a way to put on guard some of our friends and partners in the private sector to know that the government of Barbados will be calling on you to help us, continue to help us wrestle with these issues. So, sir, I wanted to just get some exercise in the sector and give my support to this legislation, which I am happy to highly commend to this honorable place.